Welcome to the City Current Show, powered by Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services.
This show focuses on sharing good news and powering the good in our community. Now here's your host, City Current CEO, Jeremy Park.
Welcome back to the City Current Show, powered by Higginbotham. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference and powering the good. And we always love talking about the power of purpose and helping you find your purpose. That's why we're honored to have with us Emily Moon, psychotherapist. How are you doing, Emily?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
Doing well. So when you talk about the power of purpose and how you help people, you have a 5-step plan. We'll talk about all of that and the magic that unfolds. But let's start with a little bit of how you got into this business. So give us a little bit of your backstory.
Yeah. So I found myself after getting divorced without an identity and without a purpose and very lost in life. And I went to a lot of therapists to try to figure out how do I find myself and what do I do? And what I found were therapists that wanted to just kind of walk with me through that journey, but not tell me what to do. And when you're lost in the forest, you really kind of need someone to be much more directive. And so what I started doing is figuring out, okay, what are the steps for me to find myself? And what do I need to do? Oftentimes we find people will tell us, what to do to when we have a vision or when we have a dream or when we know who we are, but they don't really talk about the steps to figure out how to find your purpose. What do you do when you're so lost? And so I just kind of took notes on myself and learned through my own growth and journey things that helped me and have put together a process that will help individuals, but mainly working with groups of people, people who have sold their businesses or C-suite execs who are having a difficult time communicating or understanding why people do what they do. And so I've kind of developed this little process to help people with these questions.
Talk about where it starts in terms of, is there an assessment on the front end, a little bit of fact finding to kind of gauge, or is this, let's move into step one. So talk about kind of where it starts for yours.
Yeah, whether it's working with an individual who's a brand or with companies, I meet with the individual to figure out what do they know about themselves, how self-aware are they, and do they know their story, and do they know why they do what they do? And so after I meet with them 1 or 2 times, I can pretty much assess, where we need to start and their level of self-awareness. And so I meet with the individuals to teach them a different way of looking at their story. And it's important that we do go back to the past because that's where we create the messages that we think about ourselves. And we create these childish ways to solve problems, and childish meaning we're children and we take a childlike approach to solve problems. But oftentimes what happens as adults, as we become adults, we don't move away from those childish solutions to problems. We take them into adulthood. And so we find ourselves on the couch saying, God, why do I do this? Why do I do what I do? So I take them back and teach them their story and the role that they played and the messages that they told themselves and who they became in order to survive life. And even if people come from a what they call, like, I had a great family, I had a great childhood, we still, life is hard. And we still create messages maybe of perfection that we take into adulthood that can kind of mess us up. So teach people, why they do what they do. And then, I teach them first, to understand their story in a different way, and then why they do what they do. And then when I'm working with a company or multiple people at a time, I then will bring those people together once they kind of learn their story and learn why they do what they do, and talk to the group about, hey, here's this person's message about himself. they were the hero in the family, and so they want to fix everything, and so they're going to show up in business meetings as the fixer, and maybe the one that doesn't learn how to or doesn't listen quite as well. And so what happens is you begin to understand the people you work with, and have a better dynamic, a better understanding of why they do what they do. And when you start putting these pieces together and the roles that people play and the messages that they have and how they solve problems, you can really teach people how to read others quite well. And so we just began to kind of work in implementing change in the people's thought processes and what they believe about themselves and how they communicate, so that the group could work together more efficiently. And it also develops compassion for people when we understand kind of what they went through and how they form these messages.
Yeah, and I think what's funny is you were talking about how, we just kind of grow older. We don't, the old habits and how we see ourselves and how they frame perspectives. I'm thinking of the video that the guy's like, he's an older guy. I love Dino chicken nuggets. And he's like, as men, we don't really mature. We just grow older. So all these childhood things that carry with us. And I mean, a big part of that, to your point, is how we grew up and the behaviors formed. And so understanding that, being aware, and then like you said, so understanding the story, and then how does that story manifest itself, which then leads us into learning their story overall. So you've got step one, understand your story, understand why you do what you do, learn their story, understand why they do what they do. So it kind of, starts to get a little bit larger in terms of the ripple that you're creating. How long does it take you? And I know everybody's a little different, and obviously as an organization, but as you're going through that process, does it move fairly quickly? Is it more like, hey, we've got a lot to unpack? Is everyone completely different? Is there any sort of through line to the timing of this?
Yeah, well, I since I work with mostly type A's, we like to do things super efficient and are pretty intense, right? We're intensive junkies there. So we go pretty fast. Usually it takes about 8 sessions to really understand your story, the other person's story, and then it takes about, so 8 sessions total, but then about 4 sessions to really begin to implement some change and work together. And that's really where the magic is, because you start to see people really bond in different ways and understand, like I said, grow compassion. So yeah, it's about 8 sessions long.
And the fifth step then is develop communication strategies, principles, and skills based on the first 4 steps. And so talk about that, because that in and of itself, there's a lot there in terms of, okay, how do we take the stories of others? How do we develop a plan for creating change and getting you where you want to go based on this purpose? And so talk about some of the different strategies, communication, like kind of unpack that step a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I like to create formulas because I think, again, being efficient and being really clear and concise helps type A people. And so I have a lot of formulas that I teach people, the if then kind of idea. And so we talk about these formulas that for someone to feel important, they must feel seen and heard. So importance equals being seen and heard. And so then we kind of go into like these ideas of like, well, how do you see someone? How do you hear someone? And what is the difference between hearing, listening, and agreeing? Because those are very different. And so I've got these formulas, and in the trust, we have to feel safe and seen and heard. And so we start building on these formulas that I've created. And so if people can keep in mind the strategies or the formulas of how to, what makes a person feel important, seen and heard, usually that's a great way to help their communication skills.
Carry that forward into an example. So you don't have to name any names, but walk us through a little bit of an illustration of how this plays out.
Yeah, so I'll give you one on a business I worked with and then an individual. For a business, I worked with the CEO, who's kind of a visionary, right? And then the CFO, who's also kind of more linear thinking and pragmatic. And and what we found, and the president as well, and what we found is that they think very differently and communicate very differently. And so I brought each one in and we talked about their story, and then went in as they understood their own messaging and how they have not changed some of their core beliefs. We went in and shared what they were comfortable with. And it gave the opportunity for everybody to see, like, wow, first of all, it was amazing because they gained such compassion. There was a certain person who had a pretty amazingly dramatic story that no one knew about. And this person shared what they were comfortable with, but the compassion that was grown just from this person sharing that story and feeling the confidence to share it through the work that we all did together, because everybody knows they're going to be sharing a bit. And then also there was a willingness that grew to work together because they really did get to know each other in a way that they had never known before. And so as we all kind of tell our story in the roundtable, we really get an insight. They got an insight into why they think the way they think and where they're coming from. And so, for example, if someone had money issues growing up and grew up very poor, they're going to naturally come from that scarcity mindset. And so it really, and when the visionary who wants to be so abundant in their thinking, and we collide, we can really begin to see, oh, I see now why he thinks the way he thinks. And it just brings such an understanding and, again, a willingness to work together. For individuals, I work with celebrities who often find themselves in trouble. And the question is like, well, why do you do that? And so I take them back to help them understand their story. And, were they... did they always have a rebellious spirit? Did they always think they weren't good enough? Whatever the story is, and then as we have worked together to help these people, I guess, understand their story, we talk about managing thoughts and changing the story around, that there's two sides to the coin, and you don't always have to think the way you have. And I also talk a lot about brain science and the neural pathways and how long it takes to change a thought. And so, what working with the individuals do is it brings, again, self-awareness, which will allow them to merge their thoughts and their feelings together, which will create a sense of wholeness. And as we begin to do, there's so many dynamics that go into this. And as we start to do it, the person begins to grow and see that the way in which they used to think, there are alternatives, and that message that they told themselves long ago doesn't have to be the same. And again, like I said, we also talk a lot about managing our thoughts, and that, our brain sometimes is a runaway train and it manages us, but we want to flip it to where that we manage our thoughts, our feelings, and our brain. We're in charge.
Yeah. So how long does it take to change a thought?
Well, I'm not a neuroscientist, but I do know some things about this a little bit, and it takes 63 days, 3 neurocycles, and one neurocycle is 63 days. So it takes a while, certainly, to implement habits that will stick. And the first 63 days are really important. And so when I do work with people, brands, individuals who are brands, let's say, I definitely stick with them for the 63-day cycle, just to be sure that they have changed and do what they need to do. So, yeah.
Talk about, on your end, next steps. So where can people go to carry these conversations forward, to learn more about you and your efforts? Where can we go?
Yeah, well, my website is emilymoon.life, and I certainly can be reached through that. And then on Instagram, it's the Emily Moon, and I think we'll post something about that. And certainly, yeah, through my website, anybody can get in touch with me and have conversations.
How has all of this changed your purpose, changed your perspective, the way that you interact with others?
Mm. It's so interesting because as I have evolved, I never really have wanted to be on the stage. I have never wanted to be in the limelight by any means, but I want to be someone who can speak wisdom into others who have a great platform. And so I was working when I first began with just individuals, and as I have gone through my own work and gone through my own journey, I guess I have evolved into wanting to work with more and expand my reach, but certainly don't want to be the face of it. I just would prefer to stay behind the scenes and speak to the people who can change many people who have that platform.
Well, make sure everyone go to emilymoon.life to learn more. So emilymoon.life. Emily, thank you for all you do to power the good. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services is proud to power the City Current Show. We're a people-first company that protects what matters most, the families, businesses, and trailblazers that keep our community going. As one of the nation's top independent insurance firms, Higginbotham is a single-source solution for business insurance, employee benefits, HR services, and personal insurance that's customized for you. We're here to serve you, the people you care about, and your community. Call 866-377-1959 or visit higginbotham.com.